Hello. All right. Whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on demand, thank you for joining us on this Yom HaShoah, a very different Yom HaShoah. And what's significant is that in this day and age, many people are asking what's going to be in the future, years from now, when there are less survivors. So right now, we have an opportunity to embrace the survivors or the people that experienced the Churban Europa in person. So let's capitalize on that. And let's take advantage of the people around us and speak with them and hear the lessons that they have for us. So I'd like to introduce my father, Brother Starck, who will give us some words of introduction. You're on.
Thank you very much, David. Good evening, my friends. I'd like to join my son in welcoming you, in taking the time to tune in to this so-called chat regarding my experiences during the Churban Europe. I'm still a member of the HaShoah. I don't like, and my family don't like, the term of Holocaust survivor. So I usually refer myself to the being as a member of the HaShoah. That, of course, you all know what the HaShoah are. And I also would like to tell you that I am not a mumche in this new modern technique of communication, but fortunately my son is, and hopefully he will guide us through the next hour or so successfully. So you should be able to hear my message clearly and understand, and also get to a period of time of Q&A, of questions and answers, which I like very much. That gives me also an idea how you think. It is a well-known fact that less and less survivors, or less and less members of the HaShoah, as I call myself, can get up in this world still today and say what I'm going to tell you is something that I have experienced and something that I have witnessed myself. So when I usually, at this time when I start opening my lips and speaking about my experiences, I always have to give a shvach v'hoidua to the Rebbeinu Shalom, that he has helped me to get to this point in my age, and I'm still able to do it, something which I feel is of great importance to future generations. I would like to give you a little anecdote of an experience that I've recently experienced in Israel, in a visit to Eretz Israel with my wife. Usually we spend several Shabbos in Eretz Israel. First Shabbos usually we spend in Yerushalayim. And the next Shabbos, we try to go into Bnei Brak because I have a daughter who's in Bnei Brak. And I like to go to different shuls during Shabbos to experience different experiences in Bnei Brak. I still remember the shul, I think it was the Sadegera shul in the Shchuna of where my daughter lives near mine, HaShoah. And as in every shul now that you come in on Friday night, you find on the table a whole selection of different pamphlets and different short Dvar Torahs. And I reached out for one, and I started reading an article. I still remember the headline of the article was Torah's Overs. And the article, some rabbi, I don't remember his name, he claims that we are very unfortunate when the time of Bein Hazmanim comes along. Bein Hazmanim is usually the time beginning of Rosh Chodesh Elul and beginning of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when most of the Talmidim from the Mosdos HaTorah, they usually come home and spend time with their families preparing for the Yom Tov. This was usually a very, very nice time. I remember as a young child at home also, we looked forward to these times. And this Rav states in this article, actually he doesn't state, he laments, or he is bringing up and with great sorrow that unfortunately, since we do not have these Talmidim sitting and learning Torah in the yeshivas, in the Moses Torah, and the Koilim, we do not have the schus of Limud Torah, of Talmud Torah. And since we do not have this schus during this time, we are lacking something which is very, very important. And I imagine I could understand what he is saying. But nevertheless, this is still a time that everybody, most of the yeshiva, come home and spend some time with their families. The following week, I think it was already in Yerushalayim. I also go in Friday night to a shul, and I grab one of the pamphlets, and lo and behold, what do I see in this pamphlet? A retort or an answer to the pamphlet that I read Shabbos before. I don't remember the name of this rabbi, but he really, really, I think, gives them a big lecture. It tells them, how can you say that we have no schusim because these children now are sitting home? I think it's very much related to what we are experiencing today. Unfortunately, so many of the Talmidim from different schools and different Moses of Torah are sitting home with their parents. But he states, do you realize that this is the time, only time, when they are spending it with their grandparents and their parents, they can really be mekayim the mitzvah of kibbud avim. In kibbud avim, the mitzvah of kibbud avim is as great as the mitzvah of limud Torah berabim. So he really gives them a lesson and says, you were wrong. I think that the fact that they are going to be home, and every time they say, Zaidi, can I bring you a cup of tea? Or can I bring you a pillow to sit on to make your existence or your life a little easier? This is kibbud avim, and they're mekayim. They can be mekayim that mitzvah 4 or 5, maybe, I don't know how many times in an hour. It's not one a day or so forth. So I'm saying that it's amazing how right now, my friends, I can tell you, sitting at home, you're not sitting idly. Anytime that you are helping your parents and you're helping your Zaidi and Baba, it is the great mitzvah of kibbud avim, and the Torah tells us the great schar, the great award that mitzvah usually gets. So I also want to tell you about 2 experiences that I've experienced during my being in the camps. These 2 experiences were especially very, very, I think, unique. They were unique in the point that most of them, both of them, almost ended my life. The first one, of course, was totally unknown to me, but the second one was something that I realized that this may be my very end. My whole life has come to an end. The first one was as we arrived in Auschwitz, and the train moved in, and they opened the door, and the whole command from prisoners, also Jewish boys who were, or Jewish men and boys who were working at the arrival of these transports from the Hungarian ghettos. And of course, as the minute the door opened up and the word of Aussteigen reverberated all over very loudly. And of course, everybody was very eager to leave these crowded and unfortunate circumstances in these boxcars. So everybody started to disembarking, and the same thing from our boxcar, including my 2 sisters who were with us, and of course my parents and myself. But my mother motioned to me, don't disembark yet. Wait a moment. And of course I listened to her, and I waited a moment, and pretty soon I looked around, and there were 3 people standing in that empty freight car. There was standing my father, holding my film, of course. And my mother opened up her bundle that she carried with her, and was sitting in the boxcar. And she started taking our articles of clothing and putting it on me. And I asked her, Mother, why are you doing this? She says, because you see the platform, look outside. We have to leave everything. We cannot take anything with us. They told us we cannot take anything. So maybe just the clothing that you have on yourself, you'll be able to keep. And as she's doing this, a young man, I never learned his name, and I don't know his age, but I imagine he was approximately about age of 21, 22, a young man. And he looks into the boxcar and sees the three of us still there. And he gets a little angry and he says, in Yiddish, he says, Yidene, he says, you were told, I gave you the instructions, I gave you the command to disembark. Why are you still there? And my other motions to him, we're getting up just another minute. And she keeps on putting on the clothing on me. And as he passes by to observe and look over a few other boxcars in front of us, eventually he doesn't go too far, but then he decides he must make sure that we listen to him. And he comes back and he says, we're still there. So this time he gets up on top of the empty boxcar, and is this time we are the four of us, including him. And he again turns to my mother and he says, Yidene, that means woman. Wird es nicht dürfen. He will be not needing all this. Why are you doing this? Stop doing it. And she stopped doing it. But that moment he looks at me, looks in my eyes, and turns to me and says, Ingele, wie alt bist du? How old are you? And I say, 14. And he says, die bist nicht 14, die bist 18. And I was a little bit of a mischievous kid.
What did that mean?
A mischievous kid.
No, he said, you're not.
Yeah, I didn't listen, so I didn't take any answers so quickly. And I started to question him, and I says, als ich bin 14, wo soll ich sein 18?
What did that mean?
If I am 14 years old, why should you tell me I should be 18? And then he turns and looks at my eyes and is very serious. He says, Ingele, du fragt mir nicht kein Kasches. He says, little boy, here we do not ask any questions. And if I tell you to get off, then you must get off immediately. My father handed me the film, and both got off from the empty boxcar, and of course I separated from my mother at that moment, never to see her again. And they lined us up in four, and pretty soon the command was given again to get into single file. My father was in front of me, I was behind him. Again, I heard the question. First question was, how old are you? Which asked my father, and then he gave him an answer to all the second question is, kannst du arbeiten? Can you work? And he says, of course, affirmative. He said, jawohl. And he motioned him to proceed in a certain direction. My turn came, and of course, I had all this clothing on me, and I was for a 14-year-old boy, I was already quite tall. And I stretched myself out, and he looks at me and he says, how old I am. And I immediately saw this young man in front of my eyes. And I say, 18. And the next question was, kannst du arbeiten? And I said, jawohl. And he motioned to me I should proceed in the same direction as my father. You realize, my friends, that sequence after sequence, the fact that we didn't get off immediately, and then my mother started putting the clothing on me, all this, so that this young man could give me a tip me off and say, don't say that you're 14, you're 18. That, of course, saved my life. Otherwise, I was not aware that how close my life could have ended right there. And again, also, I will tell you one more thing that I witnessed. I witnessed in the other side where the women were standing, where many times, again, some of the same young boy, a prisoner with the same prison uniform as was issued to us later on, he said to many mothers, he says, you're holding your child, please give it to the older woman, let her hold it. I didn't tell her why, but it turned out to be, if some mother went through this Malchamoyas, which could have been Mengele, and was holding a child automatically. Didn't even ask her when she can work or not. He immediately motioned her to go in a different direction. So this is when I really witnessed Yad Hashem. I really witnessed the hand of God. The other time, I must say, many times when I have been speaking in Moses Torah to young men, and some of them, many times, the most of the time, they have some very, very, I would say, thoughtful and intelligent questions. I yet have to come along any kid that would somehow ask me, which is a foolish question. They all make a lot of sense, and they all have to bear an answer. They have to answer them properly. And many times I am asked, how is it possible, Srulek, which they call me in the camps, how is it possible that you were able to maintain a Ahavas Hashem? How is it possible that you could still believe in God and talk about Emunah? And I must tell you, my dear listeners, just as that even though if you were a realist and you saw things that were developing not week by week or month by month, but even hour by hour and minute by minute, you realistically had to realize, what's the use of trying to prolong life? What's the use of fighting to stay alive? We are all going to end up over there. We're pointing to the crematoriums. So why fight it? In the minute that somebody came to me with this type of a this type of a complaint, I felt terribly sad, and I felt that this person is giving up all hope. And the second time that my life was also came very close, I was what's called a Spitzenträger. That was my job in the second camp, and the third camp rather, that they brought us, which called milk. Spitzenträger means the translation is the carrier of the pointers. What pointers did I carry? Most of the prisoners, our job was to work and build tunnels in a mountain. These tunnels were not, we constantly advanced, prisoners advanced with air hammers, drilling into the side of the mountain, which was basically sand and pebble. And there were prisoners standing and shoveling the debris on a conveyor belt, which carried the debris out from the tunnels. My job was to collect all these steel pointers, which after a while got dull and they couldn't perform the job properly, and bring them to a blacksmith who was in charge of a fire going outside of the tunnels. You couldn't have a fire going in a tunnel because it would probably consume the oxygen and nobody would be able to survive. So I carried the pointers to him and he sharpened them. And then I took usually about 24 or 25 of these pointers, put them on my shoulder and brought it back into the depth of the tunnel and distributed it again to these prisoners that were advancing into the mountain, side of the mountain with those air drills. So that was my job. Fortunately, we were also changing shifts. And one time we were working, instead of working a day shift, we were working a day shift. Usually they finally brought us out. Our work was outside the camp. The camp was something where they housed us in barracks, but the work was done outside the camp. I would say about a 25 to 30-minute ride, again by boxcars to work. And since it was nighttime and it was very quiet, there were not too many German masters around, so to speak. I had a brilliant idea. I decided that why should I walk in out of the tunnel carrying this load of pointers? I would just park on the conveyor belt, and as the conveyor belt is moving out, and that conveyor belt was at least maybe a half a mile or maybe longer, they kept on advancing it as they advanced in the tunnels. I will just sit down on it and slowly ride out. And then the minute I reach the mouth of the tunnel, I'll just jump off and go to my blacksmith and have him sharpen them. Very good idea, right?
So you're going to ride on the conveyor belt?
That is correct. I set myself down on the conveyor belt, riding aside, but unfortunately, I fell asleep on the conveyor belt. And as the conveyor belt was reaching the mouth of the tunnel, there was a platform built on top of the conveyor belt, which again, some prisoners were standing and shoveling the debris back on the conveyor belt. But the distance between the top of the platform over the conveyor belt and the conveyor belt itself was very, very narrow, very small. It was not enough for me. So I was actually wedged in between the moving conveyor belt and the debris that was constantly accumulating against my face and my mouth. Believe it or not, my friends, but at that moment, I was suddenly came through my mind like in a dream, and I was thinking to myself, is that the way? There's so many ways, so many misses here that I witnessed, so many people dying different many types of death. Is this the way you want? Do you want me to get out? Is this the way you want me to end my life? And suddenly, I think, just like from nowhere, I feel somebody holding to my shoulders and pulling me out from a narrow, narrow spot. And then he pulled me out. He says, "Oh, you're Srulek." He says, "You lost your jacket, you lost your sleeve, and you're all bloody." And I take a look, and there's a gaping hole in my arm, my right arm, which was actually while the conveyor belt kept moving, and I was wedged in there. It kept rubbing against my arm. And eventually it opened up the wound. And there was, he says, "You're a mess. What am I going to do with you?" And I says, "I'm still alive." He says, "Yeah, but look at your arm." He says, "You know what? There is a doctor working in the tunnel ahead. Why don't let me take you to him, and maybe he can do something for you." We did reach that doctor who was standing shoveling the debris again by himself on that. But I must also tell you, the minute I was pulled out, and I turned around and I looked at that person, he was I remember his name was Freund, and he was originally from Stockholm. And I looked at him and I said, "How is it possible? Where did he?" I looked at that skin and bones, and I said to myself, "Where did he get the strength to pull me out from that narrow spot? How did he do it?" Just looking at him, I couldn't believe it. So you see that from minute to minute, there was Yad Hashem there. There was no doubt. Somehow after this,
how did he hear you? Because it must have been a loud motor.
I decided that there's no way that I can extricate myself. But nevertheless, I still have to shout. So I shouted for help. And I was hoping somebody would hear me because, as I said, it was night shift. There were not too many prisoners working around here and there. This particular this particular young man who saved my life was standing there and outside and also shoveling any debris that fell off the conveyor belt. He had to shovel it back on. And now he heard my cries and he walked over, and he himself doesn't know how he got the strength. He took me to the doctor. The doctor told me, "I have nothing. I have no bandages. I have nothing to wash your wound out." Finally, he told me, he says, "Why don't you urinate in some pan here?" And he washed out my wound with the urine. And he says, "Look here, I doubt very much that it's not going to be infected. It's probably going to be infected." And sure enough, it was. And I went back to the barracks, and my friends shielded me from the guards to see that that I can still go to work. I can still be counted as a number who can show up for work. And yet it did get infected. And since we were working night shift, I think we usually came back in the morning to camp itself, and we went to sleep, but I couldn't sleep on the bunk. So I decided that I'm going to go outside. And it was a very, very beautiful, warm day. And I lay down on the grass, and I said, maybe I'm going to fall asleep here. And the minute I lay down on the grass and I exposed my wound towards the sun, and the sun hit it, it felt much better. And then the longer I kept it exposed to the sun, the better it felt. the Rebbeinu Shalom gave me 7 or 8 beautiful days, sunny days, and I kept every morning. I didn't sleep in the barracks. I went out and I lay down on that grass and I exposed my wound to the sun. And little by little, it started sort of getting pulling together, and some of the infection went away. So you see, my friends, again, I have to interpret the Yad Hashem in every from one to the other. And how is it possible? And I said to myself, it is maybe just maybe that I will have the schools to be liberated. And sure enough, liberation came along. This May, the 8th, will be approximately 76 years. We were liberated on May the 6th in our 4th camp. This in itself is a saga that I can speak about it for hours, about the time of liberation. But just to end, to tell you that basically the only demand we had from our liberators, which were the Americans, is to give us some food. And sure enough, they did make a few mistakes giving us the wrong food, but eventually they brought in also field kitchens that distributed many times oatmeal with farina in powdered milk. So that is something that we could digest, something we could hold on to. So basically, we were standing liberated, and many times I speak about the liberation just to end and say, according to my humble opinion, I said it was very much, we could compare liberation to Har Sinai. Just like in Har Sinai, many Jews said, I'm going to be a good Jew, I'm going to Kabul Torah Shebeksav. But Torah Shebeksav, I don't need all these different gezeras and different mitzvahs that Bonim have instituted. I can live without it. And the same thing happened when the time of liberation. Many says, I'm going to be a good Jew, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to murder, but I cannot be any mere Shomer Torah mitzvahs. Till many of the Gedolim who were Shlichim from Eretz Yisrael, like the Klosenberger Rebbe, Yischisa Yudaleinu, who told us, brothers and sisters, we have no choice, but we have to go back to our Mesorah that was given to us, implanted in us by our parents and grandparents, by our teachers and Mechanchim, that we have to have both Torah Sheba'al Peh and Torah Shebeksav. Without both of them, we will not be able to exist as a nation. Thank you for listening to me. And if Dudek, you have
we have questions for you. Right, so first of all, for those viewing and those who are just joining us at this time, feel free to share your question with us in the comments below. And in the meantime, we have questions that were sent in ahead of time. And again, that doesn't count out anyone who wants to ask Srulek Starck some questions right here, right now. So the question I have for you comes from Nava in Chicago. She wants to ask you, why didn't your family get out of Europe before things got bad? I mean, and if you didn't, did anyone from your family get out before Churban Europe?
Very, very interesting question. Why not? Of course, why not? Because if you look into history and you see that the biggest immigration to America came in the 1900s, and I would say in the beginning actually of the century. These were people who were absolutely went through pogroms in Poland, in Galicia, and in Russia. These were people who were so poor that they didn't know what the next morning is. They got a little warm soup, maybe made from the caramel seeds. That's the only thing they had. So consequently, what could be worse to go to America if they had the opportunity? But we lived under a tremendous democracy. Czechoslovakia, in my time, when I was a little boy, Czechoslovakia was a tremendous country in a democracy which tremendously advanced from all the other countries around it. And we had a very good life, even though we were not rich, but we had a good life. And who thought of leaving everything and just going to America? So this is the reason why nobody ever thought that he has to pack himself up and leave.
But did anyone from your family, did they leave? Your immediate family didn't, but did anyone?
My immediate family didn't. It so happened that there is one of my grandfather's sisters did go to America from our city, from Munkash, and also one of my grandfather's brothers seem to have gone to America. It so happened when I managed to get to America, I did meet my aunt in Brooklyn, who was my grandfather's sister. She welcomed me, of course, very, very well. And fortunately, she also had some pictures which my father sent to her, or she brought along with her, which these pictures came in very handy when I wrote my history in the book, because certainly we didn't able to recover anything after returning home from the camps.
Next question comes from Lewis in Northbrook. He says, I noticed the cover of your book shows a red triangle. And he goes, weren't Jews prisoners given yellow triangles? We asked if that was a mistake that was made on the book.
No, there was no mistake. There's a reason for it. I often wondered the same thing. And I often wondered something else, which is not in the book, which cannot be found in the book. Yeah, I think I may have mentioned in the book the fact that I did not have a tattoo. They did not tattoo the number of 68,818 to my arm. And this is, I found out only about maybe 11, 12 years ago through a report from Yad Vashem, that the reason was because during 1944, in the middle of the summer, there were negotiations going around between the Hungarian Judenrat, the Hungarian leadership of Krasner and so forth, with the Machshemri Eichmann, the fact that for a certain amount of money, which would be over, the number was over $100 million, they would be able to release 125,000 Hungarian prisoners from the concentration camps, and also and let them go. So basically, I think when I got my number in Mauthausen, it was a number which was scribbled on a piece of cloth that constantly had to be attached to my jacket. If I, for some reason or other, lost my jacket, which I did, and I acquired a new one, of course, my number again had to be attached on there because that was my name. 68,818 was my name, and so forth. So basically, and also the fact that we were not designated as Jewish prisoners, because we were not taken to camps to Auschwitz because we were Jews, but we are political prisoners. We they couldn't trust us. The Nazis couldn't trust us as and because of our political beliefs. So therefore, we also got the red triangle, which was the triangle of political prisoner. And of course, the gypsy got a different color, and the homosexual got a different color. So there are many different colors, and the red triangle is designated as a political prisoner.
Okay, we have a question coming in now from Eliza in Columbus, so I believe. She says, one of her kids wants to know if it was cold in the camps and what did you eat there?
Well, there are two different questions. Of course, it was cold.
Well, depends what time of year.
We had seasons there. We had the same seasons as in all of the world, especially in Europe. And in Europe, in this time, it could be very, very cold. Yes, it was the only way we could shield ourselves from the cold. As I said, we were working in these tunnels, and there was another group whose job was to reinforce the tunnels with cement, so they should not be in danger of caving in. And since they used a lot of cement, usually 50-kilo cement bags, these came in paper bags, and sometimes and they were discarded, of course, and sometimes, many times, my friends and some prisoners got a hold of these bags and cut a few holes in it and put it on themselves under the shirt. Unfortunately, many, many times, when we managed to, they brought us back into camp from work. They lined us up on the Pelplatz, and again, went through a physical search, just for, God forbid, we brought in a rotten potato or a discarded bone. So consequently, when they found some prisoners were holding these paper cement bags under their shirts, they were very, very punished severely.
Okay, and she also asked, like, what did you eat there? What kind of food did you get?
We got a portion. There was supposedly a bread, which was, the bread was not made from wheat flour. The bread was made from beans and and some even were mixed with sawdust. And it was a bread that was divided sometimes into 6 portions, sometimes into 8 portions, and given us once a day. In the morning, we got some watery soup, which again was called caraway soup or tea. And in the evening, as we came home, they gave us some portions of called gemüse, or it was supposed to be a vegetable soup. Of course, there were vegetables in there, but most of them were rotten before they put it in. But nevertheless, it did give us some sustenance to keep our lives going.
I have a question from Sari. Sari asks you, did you feel that you've gained anything by going through the Holocaust?
Where's Sari from?
I'm not sure. I have to look at her file.
Did we gain something from the Holocaust?
Do you feel that you gained anything by going through?
Every member of the HaShoah played a so-called survivor, as they call him. Everybody feels that they gained something. The only thing is, the problem is that some are willing to share it with others. Some are willing to speak about it. Some are not willing to speak about it. Some will never were able to even go in and think about it. But nevertheless, it affected everybody's life, one way or the other. I'm very fortunate, and again, Chazdei Hashem Kilei Sami, that I don't have any terrible dreams like some of my friends, I imagine, told me that they experienced of what they witnessed. And I'm able to speak about it as I'm speaking now and answering questions about it.
Okay, I have a question here from Malka. Malka is asking you, why did they give number names instead of keeping your real name?
Because every prisoner had a number.
Right, but why did they do that? Why did they replace your real name with a number?
Because you could probably assume and say, today you're Moshe Yankel, and next week you're Avram, just for some reason or other. A number was also something which was either tattooed in your arm, or it was always displayed in your prisoner jacket, or even in the bag. Some even had numbers which were again displayed in the bag, to say this is who I am. I'm number so and so. And once when they punished me, the only way they announced when we were finishing work, and we were all emerging from the tunnel, and I suddenly heard 68, 818, will you step forth? I knew that it was not to give me an extra plate of soup, and that's where I was gotten the 25 lashes.
Oh, so you actually got a question about that. The question from Yoni in Skokie. He says, I read your book, A Boy Named 68818, and he says, I don't understand. What was the real reason that you were singled out for a beating?
The reason why I was singled out for beating is because in these tunnels, the prisoners were working, of course. As I said, they were working with air hammers and proceeding into the side of the mountain. But they were also German engineers who were watching that the reinforcement of cement was properly done, and everything was done properly according to their plans. So there were some German engineers working. Some of them were absolutely terrible. They were anti-Semitic and Soine Yisrael.
That's an understatement.
But, yeah, well, but besides the SS, and they one of them came to the capo, which was, I remember the capo that called out the names. His name was Fritz, and he was a gypsy, a very, very, I think, decent guy, not a murderer like many of the others. And he told him that this kid who delivered the pointers was goofing around, and he delivered the pointers very, very late, and therefore they could not finish the quota of work that they usually had to do. So consequently, they was punished because supposedly I delivered the pointers.
So I'm wondering, you mentioned the attitude. We have a question from Rosalind in Detroit. She asked, did you ever witness any moments of humanity or even kindness from the Nazis?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I must say so. I experienced it twice, especially that I remember. Once I experienced it when I was wounded, and I my friends who were with me tried to shield me. So they always told me to go in when we were always marching towards work and to the train. And from the train was always a row of five. So they always put me in the middle so they should not notice that I have a wound. But once I was in the side of the group going up, tremendous amount of steps. We're going up to the mountain, and one German soldier who was a guard, was guarding us with a gun about every 10, 15 feet, another one. He handed me a sandwich, and he handed me sometimes an apple. And he always was I always tried to be in the same row parallel to him outside. And many, many times he handed me something which was life-saving. The second time was even more important. It was already late in the fall when things were not going so well. I imagine for the whole German, I think Reich. And I was walking down the camp. The rules were that if you walk down the camp and a German soldier or a German officer approaches you, you had to stop till he passed by, and you had to take off your mitzvah. Mitzvah is the cap. So you had to stand without the mitzvah. I'm walking down inside the camp near the Appellplatz. Suddenly I see approaching me a officer, but not of the German SS, but of the Luftwaffe, of the Air Force. He must have been a tremendous decorated officer with many, many medals and beautiful, beautiful coat with a fur collar. And as he approached me, I froze and I stopped and I took off my mitzvah and I was standing. And as he passed me by, let's say I was going east and he was going the opposite direction, west. So as he passed me by, suddenly he stopped and he told me halt. In other words, I should not keep going. I thought, what am I going? What's going to happen to me now? Anyhow, he says to me, he says, young boy. He says, younger boy. He says, halte mal aus. He says, hold out. Es wird nicht dauern viel longer. It will not last much longer. Why don't you just hold out if you can? And then he went away. I never met him again. I don't know who he was, but I was rushed into the camp to my barracks, and I said to my friends, do you know what just happened? And they all told me, you must be hallucinating. You must be talking from either from temperature or something that you imagine. But this never happened. Yes, my friends, it happened. It was a tremendously decorated German Luftwaffe, whether it was a general or other officer. He told me, please hold out. He told me to stay alive, try to stay.
Okay. Your book, this is another question from Malky in Lakewood. She says, your book talks about how you observed holidays like Yom Kippur and Sukkot in the concentration camp. She wants to know, did you celebrate any other holidays like Pesach or even Shabbos?
Oh, no. First of all, Shabbos, there was no such thing as Shabbos. We had to work Shabbos like any other day.
Did you even know what day it was most of the time?
I'm coming to that.
Oh, okay.
The other thing is, but who had the energy or who had the need to keep the calendar going or keep track, whether it's Chodesh Nisan, whether it's Shavuos or B'Tammuz, whether a fast is coming up or what's coming up. What for? Who needed it? You had only one thing that you had to deal with, and how to stay alive another hour, another day, or another month for that matter. So consequently, that was the only thing that you had to deal with. So who cared? Well, but again, some people did care, and some did wanted to know. And as I mentioned in my book, fortunately, we had couple the calendar, couple the keeper of the calendar, who had a computer up here. And if somebody wanted to know when Usher B'Tammuz is coming along, or Yom Kippur or Shoshana, all you had to do was ask couple. The couple was never wrong.
Now we have a question from Beth in Chicago. Just how did you come to America, and then how specifically did you make your way to Chicago?
How I came to America, I had no desire and I had no inkling, and I had I have to end up that I will end up in America. As a matter of fact, not only didn't I have a desire or inkling to get here, but I kept on making speeches and I kept working for the Brecha and other groups to aid and to help get people through Aliyah Beit, whether it was the Exodus, whether it was any other ways, get them to go to Eretz Israel. They all kept on premising that my turn is due very soon. My turn due very soon, and it took probably many years for us to finally. I didn't hear anybody tell me your turn, Srulek, your turn is going to be next. You are now leaving to go on Aliyah Bet to Israel. And unknown to me, my sisters who were in a different DP camp, they saw a sign once listed on the wall that any young man who was liberated from the Harm in Europe and from a certain age to a certain age, let's say from the age of age of 16 to the age of 20, who when the camps can register himself to go to America, and he will be he will get an affidavit from, which was later on I found out the issue, but Mrs. Roosevelt, the president's wife, and she issued about 500 affidavits to boys of that age to come to America, and notice came to me that I should appear in Bremenhaven to go to America at a time when I was very depressed because they kept on delaying me going to Israel.
In Bremenhaven, that was the port in Germany, right?
Very important port. That's where most of the ships, whether it was troop ships or other ships, where they embarked to America.
Okay. Then we have another question from Eliza. She says, you talk about that you and a group of friends that you had in the camps, you were mechazek each other, that you gave each other chizuk, and you gave chizuk to other people. She's asking, were there any influences in the camp that mechazek to you? Who in the camp gave you chizuk? That like an adult or someone that was older?
No, there was nobody in the camp that was in a position or really openly could give us chizuk because everybody was busy, as I said, trying to save his own life. But we, as a group of young boys my age, who were actually, as I said, trying to give chizuk to others. Not only I managed to give chizuk, and as I prescribed by producing that coal dust that was tremendously helpful to the machle of dysentery, to that particular epidemic, and which was in the camps very often. Unfortunately, many prisoners checked in to the Revere, to the hospital, and this machle never checked out. Friends of mine too. So basically, I helped those through this way. But basically, we try to encourage everybody to just to not to think about the worst thing. We were, as I mentioned in my book, we were crying when nobody's seen us, but we were singing when the time was the worst time, when people were freezing in storms and snowstorms rays, marching to work.
Okay, so I want to remind our viewers and maybe those who just joined us that we're taking your questions now. If you'd like to include them in the commentary. And we also see a question from Jordan. Jordan's asking, while some people came out being ma'amanim and some people are questioning God, he asked how you came out, but you addressed that question at the beginning.
I addressed that question because as I prescribed twice in my life, where my life was almost extinguished, I saw Yad Hashem going from one stage to the other, and it would have been impossible for me to survive without something which I see, but Nissim Geluim, Nissim open Nissim in the floors to show me that this must be Yad Hashem involved. That Srulek, you will be survived.
Right. So Jordan, I recommend that you can rewatch the broadcast afterwards if you missed that part. Now another question we have from Baruch in Chicago. After the war, did you keep contact with the people who were interned with you in the camps? And who were some of these people?
Oh, he probably means the friends that I mentioned that were with me in the camps.
Yeah, I mean, like, just were you in touch with people after liberation? And,
yeah, well, I made some new friends after liberation also, and most of the boys that my age they were with me in camp were liberated, except one who was a different story. Unfortunately, no, I'm sorry, two of them who were through some other ways they 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 uh, they were used as props for the Red Cross, and then eventually they were killed. But nevertheless, two of them settled in Chicago that I were able to keep in touch constantly. Either we met at different banquets or different occasions, and or we called each other. And several others settled. Some in Cleveland, some some in Memphis, out of Memphis, and so basically they yes for a while, and also in New York, first two in New York. So for a while we did manage to keep in touch, but eventually I think we lost that opportunity, and we sort of and many of them already, of course, years and years ago passed away also suddenly. So forth. So they basically yes, there were two in Chicago, which were I welcome very much that I have somebody that went through with me this particular and was liberated with me, and so forth. So that was a very good feeling to have somebody present in this city. And others were the other cities, and we managed to get in touch.
Now, of course, we also understand, and unfortunately, many of these Shira Saplatim are no longer with us. They're
well, I mentioned that it's
right.
It's every not every week or every month, but it's every day. We reach a point where right now there's less and less, and so that's why every time I do have the opportunity to speak about it, and I do want to speak about it only for one reason. The reason is that you should remember, and you should be higara to lebincha. Remember, the only reason I speak to you that you should be able to pass it on to your future generations, and not to forget that Churban Europe, in my opinion, was probably a bigger Churban that ever happened in the history of the Jewish people.
So that leads us to the next question from Deborah in Chicago. She says, there will sadly come a day when there are few or no survivors able to share their story. She's asking you as a survivor, how would you like to see Yom HaShoah observed 10 or 20 years from now when there may be no one left to talk about it?
Deborah has had a few questions already. It's very nice. She from Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's asking me like, so
right.
in 10 to 20 years, how should we be observing Yom HaShoah?
Well, the way you should be observing Yom HaShoah is Bihikarat Levin. Just like in Pesach time, before we sit down to the Seder. The whole idea and the whole, whatever we conduct, the whole way we conduct our Seder is that the children, the future generations should observe it and ask, why are we doing the things that we are doing? And the same way, Bihikarat Levin should also be for future generations, that you should be able to tell them that there was a Churban Europe where millions and millions of our brothers and sisters never perished. And these were mamash, gedolim, and innocent people that we have to remember, and we have to prevent something from this to ever happen again. I also was asked many times the question, do I think that history can repeat itself and it can happen again? Yes, of course. History has shown us. If you go through history of Bai Sheni and the whole 2,000 years of the 500-600 years on the Romans and the Byzantines and then the Hellenists and all these different sects, and we can see that nevertheless people did survive. The Jewish people did survive, and they're still around, which other tremendous powers disintegrated and got wiped out. Why? Because we have accepted, I mean, like they accepted on Purim, Kimu v'kiblu mashe kiblu kwar. We have reconfirmed and we accepted that we have no other choice but to go on with the Besorah that our parents and teachers gave us.
Okay, so we have one last question before we start going. We're getting this question from many different people, obviously, because globally we're going through a challenging time right now. So many people are asking, based on your personal experiences in Churban Europa and what happened in the Holocaust, what perspective can you offer regarding the current corona pandemic in terms of how we can understand it?
Well, in my own mind, in my own vision, I see many, many parallels to what's happening now in the world when we are fighting this terrible machlo. I see many parallels that really we went through in the camps. The one parallel which we went through in the camps, lo yaleinu, lo yaleichem. There's so many people who died now, and unfortunately, the parents, children, and family could not be present and see of the last moments or say even vidui with this particular person that knows that it is his final moment. So he died alone, and many times, unfortunately, even the Kvura was alone. By being alone, I mean there was nobody present where he could be present. So this is the same thing. Unfortunately, many brothers lost their brothers in the camp. Many children lost their fathers who were with them in the camp, and they never had a chance. Even they because once they checked into to the hospital, the cold beer, and they never came out again. And they don't even know the your side. I don't know the your side of my father. When I separated with my father, which I didn't mention, I mentioned the separation with my mother. The separation with my father took place in Mauthausen, which was my third camp, where I got the number. And by accident, I was separated with my father and never saw him again. I don't know his exact your side. I tried to find out, but so far I was unable to find somebody that really was with him in the same camp, which was either Gusen or one of the other terrible camps in the Sviba, in the near Mauthausen itself. But nevertheless, I asked Shaila when I should observe his your side, and I was told by Ramaisel Sorovashon that I should observe the your side on Tzoyin Kedalia, and that is the your side of my father, and of course I know the your side of my mother, which happened exactly the time when we arrived to Auschwitz. That is known to us, and it's also been noted. It has been registered. So consequently, I think, unfortunately, I see many parallels. And just as that time, one should see the Yad Hashem in everything that is happening, I think now too we have to turn to the Rebbeinu Shalom and see that maybe this is Yad Hashem for some reason.
Okay. At this time, we have a few more questions, but we can't get to all of them. But maybe at a later time, you can address these questions at another time. But I understand also you'd like to leave our viewers with a tefillah that you like to say at the end of the program.
If I may, I usually end with a tefillah that I usually say when I address some Moses HaTorah in school and so forth. I have that
right there.
Yeah. So you will give me another moment, please. I will go through this tefillah. It is a very touching tefillah, and I think hopefully you will follow it closely. Keim Gulei Rachmim, Shoichem B'Amroimim, Hamsei Menuchen Echoinu Al Kampi Ashchinu, V'Malos Kedoshim Etoyerim Kezoyer Orukia, Mashirim Es Nishboi Seyem Shel Meyo Yisriboy Me Yisrael, Nar Anushim B'Taf Shenehergu Al Kiddush Hashem, Nishchetu V'Nechenku V'Nisrefu Le'Efer Al Yedei HaTzoyrim HaGermanim Yemach Shemon. Beinayim Arzei Halbonen Adirei HaToyro Kedoshim U'Toyrim Rusha Yeshivois V'Talmideihem Kinoikois Yisrael Sheloi Tamu Tam Chait V'Tzadikei Oilam Rabuna Yisraelim Ki Yeloi Seim Kilas HaKodesh Shemasru Nafshom Al Kedishas Hashem. Yiskre Melahenu Latoivu im Shor Tzadike Oilam. V'yimko im Nikmas Dam Abuda Fashufer Kakusa B'Soiras Moshe. Ishu Elahim, Haninu Goyim Amoy, Kidam Abuda Yikon. V'nuka Mushav L'Tzor Chipar Adusay Amoy. V'al-Yedei Avadei Chanudiyim Kusev Leimor. V'nikesi Dumam Loi Nikesi. V'adoi Doshoichen B'Tzion. V'chisve HaKodesh Nemar Lumu Yoimru HaGoyim Aye Elohim Yibuda HaGoyim Le'inenu Nikmas Dama V'Decha Ashuvu. Tehi Nafsham Tzerura B'Tzroi Rachaim Lach Yoisam B'Schias HaMesim Im Kol Meisei Yisrael Berachmim Ushlach Lunus B'Shiach Tzidkenu Livdois Oisunu B'Goloiseinu V'Chapseinu Yachad Mi'artseinu Mi'arta Kamfo Yisuras Li'artseinu V'Niski Legilush Leimu V'Neima Umay. Thank you very much again for taking the time and listening to me. And as I said, if you have any question on, that you come up with, you can feel free to give me a call or send it in by mail or by email, and I'll try and answer it. Thank you again.
Before we go, just the tefillah you said, Dad. For those that may not understand, can you briefly summarize what that tefillah was, what it was about?
I have an exact. Somebody asked me to translate that in English. I have an exact translation, but I don't have it in front of me. Basically, is a tefillah that Rebbeinu Shloim should take. We are as Jews. We are not the type of people that go out to take revenge. In the Amoy Oilam, whether it's the Ukrainians and the Polacks, and all these other nations, the Lithuanians who murder so many Jewish children, women and children, men, by open graves, by machine gunning them, hundreds of thousands of them that never got to Auschwitz. I don't think the world is aware of these terrible slaughters that took place in Galicia and in communist Podolsk and in Lvov and Duma, all these places. I don't think the world is aware of it, but nevertheless, I think the Rebbeinu Shalom is aware of it. And if we cannot take any revenge, I think that we leave it in the hands of the Rebbeinu Shalom to deal with it. And so the world should not say that these people went to slaughter like the sheep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for your
and thank you
for your knowledge in how to operate this. Right. I hope that everybody was heard me.
Okay, thank you for tuning in.